know this might be cheesy to someone else, but kind of marketing sucks. Marketing can be kind of gross sometimes. And so I think about this and I think, well, just don't be gross. Don't not do marketing. And it's like, it's that idea. It's like, well, it's just like that. It's all out there and it's all gross. It's like, well, just don't be gross.
Welcome to Content Kingdom. This is your backstage pass to the people, tools, and the trends shaping the future of content marketing.
And welcome to another episode of Content Kingdom, brought to you by Content Lion. I'm your host, David G. Ewing, and with me is Priscilla McKinney. Priscilla, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I love being on other podcasts as a fellow podcaster. And I'm just going to stop everybody right now. If you like what David's doing, then please go give him a 5-star review. That's how people find him. And this is a labor of love. So just a shout out to some of my fellow podcasters.
I totally appreciate the endorsement. And you being a fellow podcaster, it was hilarious when we first met, because I was telling our producer, you thought I was going to be on your podcast. And so you took control of our prep meeting. And I was like, wait, do you have a podcast? Yeah. Anyway, so that was really fun. And I'm looking forward to being on your podcast. So that'll be fun. But you're on my podcast today, Priscilla. And I'm so excited to have you. I really want to talk to you about some of the things that you've done with research and content and how the confluence of where research and content come together. So, kind of to set the stage for that, maybe you could tell our audience just a little bit about your background in terms of how you approach marketing and what you do at Little Bird.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I grew up in another country. And so that already starts with having a different perspective, right?
Where'd you grow up?
In Madrid, in Spain. Super fun.
Ooh, cool. All right.
I also went to boarding school in Germany, but anybody who's lived outside the US or has had the privilege of traveling or having that kind of a background, it really is a privilege because it gets you to see things from someone else's perspective. And I think that's super important from marketing. But then I got a degree in cultural anthropology, and that is really how we behave with some of these tacit, agreements that we have. What do we not say and yet we all agree to? How do we behave as a society? And that is really helpful in order to inform marketing and marketing strategy. So that's how I came into it. But I was running my marketing agency and was asked to speak at a conference, and it was a conference full of market researchers. And I was like, wait a minute, I was trained to do this work. Wait, where have all you people been hiding? But then I realized they actually, interestingly enough, are really bad at marketing their own companies, but their whole work informs marketing. So it just was this whole irony. And so that's my background coming into marketing. I began to speak at a lot of market research conferences. That became my circuit. Still to this day, I speak at those conferences. I'm at 5, 6, 7 of them every year. And so my clients, about 60 to 70% of my clients are in the market research space. So of course, I can't get away with doing marketing just based on, our thoughts or our opinions. We have to get evidence and data about the persona, about the buyer in order to inform our strategy. So that's kind of an interesting quirk about how I came to what I'm doing and why it informs how I see things and how I go forward.
How long ago was that you gave that speech?
2016. So 10 years now.
All right. And when did you come to the United States?
I came back for my I get these mixed up because I wasn't in U.S. school. My junior year, I came back my junior year. So okay. Ohio, my junior year, in Florida, my senior year, went to college out in California. So it just kind of never stopped moving.
Nice. So yeah, you're kind of like the Brene Brown of this space, and that's
oh my gosh, cool. Can I get that clip?
Do you like that?
Recording? You said it. I didn't say it, but I have someone else in market research who calls me the mayor of market research, and I really love that little moniker.
All right, we'll go with either of those. And so, help me get something together. So, market research, a lot of times, for our average listener, is something that I don't feel ever do well. They definitely outsource it to a third party company, and then they just don't have a good handle. I don't think I ever have a good handle on my market, no matter how much research I pour over, how much I understand. I don't ever know when there's enough, and I'm never 100% confident that I know everything. So my first question to you is, how do you find that point? How do you know when you know enough? And is that something that anybody ever feels they get to?
No, I mean, I talk with people from Pepsi. I just had a conversation with the head of consumer insights at Starkist. Good friends with Sebastian over at Anheuser-Busch InBev, and he manages 5 of their brands. These are people who have, they have budget, they have expertise, they have an amazing database of existing tracking, and they still don't feel they have enough, and they're always looking for it. So I would just say, from small company on up, don't think that anybody has it all together. We're all trying to work at it. And the buyer today is changing rapidly. And so even when you have that moment, you think, oh, okay, this report just came, it's almost outdated. And that shouldn't frustrate people and like keep them from doing it. It should just keep people curious and say, look, I'm going to need to make plans based on the best data I have and move forward with that. And I got to say, some data is better than no data at all. That kind of entrepreneur, like, I'm going to go by my gut. I just don't think that really is a good idea in this day and age.
Yeah, I don't know if it ever was. I read a really interesting thing that said that a lot of times entrepreneur success, I mean, when you just have, it's that thing when you have a million monkeys banging on a million keyboards, some of them are going to bang out like complete works of Shakespeare, but not most of them aren't, and I think that, yeah, when entrepreneurs follow their gut, my experience having been in EO and everything else is that, there's going to be some who hit it, but most don't. And the only ones you read about are the ones that did. So
even if someone does it, if they didn't have data and didn't have a plan and they just went with their gut, that's not repeatable. So
no, it's just luck.
Yeah. Great. That's not a good framework, right? Yeah.
So, I think for big companies that have the ability to have budgets for research, they're on market research all the time. They have a division. There's probably people in charge. The middle of the world, though, doesn't have anywhere near that same luxury, right? So what do you tell those people in terms of how they need to prioritize market research, especially as they're getting ready to start generating content and they want their content to be on point? What do you typically advise in terms of like some way of coming up with a plan so that market research is not random?
Right. Well, first of all, I just want to say, for the most part, I don't do market research. I advise people to, and we will do things that are specific to persona. And you and I have talked about this a little bit, persona building and how we build our content around strategy, right? But there are a lot of DIY tools that are out there that people can use. And I'm happy to send over a list to you. You can include in show notes. But for the point of this conversation, you can get a few things done. What I would encourage entrepreneurs to do is really get focused. What do you need to know? What will make a difference? Because otherwise you go out there and do a survey or do what we call an IDI, a one-on-one interview. Maybe you want to do that with 3 or 4 people who have followed you. So there's some real simple ways to do this that are not like, big budget and market research. You can do it without even giving yourself the title. I'm a market researcher, right? Mm-hmm. So for example, I can look at my company and say, I've been going for, 15 years and I want to go back to clients. I have signed clients for 15 years in a row. I want to go back and talk to those. They keep signing with me over and over again. Why? Have I stopped and had that conversation with them? That is a simple qualitative market research, right? You can also call a couple of people who did not renew with you. Now, can you do it yourself? They may not tell you. So that's why people get a third party, but would they say it to somebody on your team, or can you get a simple third party to do that for you? So you can gather market research without it being officially market research, right? Then you and I talked a little bit about getting our data. You and I look at our data of our podcast. We look at our data of how our LinkedIn posts are doing. All of that data is fodder. That's information in order to do better. And so people need to structure that. They say, I looked at my LinkedIn. Yeah, it's doing great. I'm like, when you say doing great, what do you mean? And I ask people often, do they have dashboards? And with LinkedIn, obviously they do not have great dashboards. So do you have a system that it is coming through as a third party that can give you that dashboard. And I got to tell you, fellow podcaster that I love and love and love is Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO. And I have no problems giving him a shout out and total freebie there. But he spends about 2.5 hours looking at each one of his episodes on YouTube in terms of looking at the data. So data is a real lifeblood of what you should do next. And it helps you not waste your marketing budget. But kind of all the way back to what we're saying about content, for me, we're a platinum HubSpot shop. Now, I don't bleed orange. So if you're on some other system, that's totally fine. But what I love about it and what I need from it is it's giving me feedback. When we put this lead magnet out, when we did this webinar, when the social media posted, how was it received? Was it clicked? And not only that, but it will help me understand, but were they marketing qualified leads? Did they become sales qualified leads? And did we get an opportunity? And lastly, did we win it? Listen, the ultimate metric, the ultimate market research or thing you should be checking is, did they give you money? That's Absolutely. A really good indication that you're doing well.
Yeah. I mean, there's that old Seinfeld joke where he goes to get a reservation from a car company and they don't have a car for him. Right. And he's like, you guys took the reservation, but you didn't hold the reservation, and it's a hilarious clip. I'll probably put that in the show notes too. But my point in bringing it up is, you can gather market research and you can then have a hypothesis about what's going to appeal, whether that's a digital marketing campaign or something that's like a trade show, something on-prem, whatever. But people can execute the marketing, but then it's about evaluating the marketing. And I feel like that is the missing piece. I find tons of digital marketers are great at like putting the buttons out there, getting everything out, the emails go out, the social media campaigns come out. But what does it all mean? Right. So maybe you could tell me just a little bit about how do you inculcate, an ability and a willingness to go back and evaluate and not just like go out and do the next campaign without ever taking a look, which unfortunately is too true and too often the case.
It's so much. And I have stopped being surprised at how big a company can be that is still engaged in that kind of behavior. Okay. I'm over it. Like nobody can surprise.
All right. Cool. I'm glad I'm not the only one. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh,
right.
Cool. My last one was a $250 million company. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have a dashboard for this? Like, what do you mean nobody's checking, the outcomes of this? It is massive, busy work, right? One of the things about the quality of content I feel right now is that we are living in an era of relatively forgettable content that people are churning out. Number one, that's a quality problem, right? But then, on the other side, the issue is that a lot of marketing teams, like you said, are just doing busy work. They're executing and they're doing their job. And I'm like, what good is doing their job if we don't know that it is actually tied to revenue? And that's where I only talk with people and say, look, if you want to work with us, number one, you got to know your numbers. You don't know them right now. We're going to walk you through it. Let's go get them. What's the churn rate? Like you bring people in, but are they going out the back door? What's that churn rate? But then also for each different campaign, what are we hoping for? Even if we think it's a wild dream, you got to start somewhere, set that goal, and then let's benchmark it. Let's figure out what we can measure. But I don't work with clients who aren't willing to do that. So I don't have to live in the world where that doesn't exist. I can come into those worlds where it doesn't exist. But this is something your listeners could crib from me today. You don't have to pay me a dime or work with me, but this is a framework that you can take to think about your marketing and make sure it's not going to be busy work and execution is not the end of it, that it's actually about results. And that is SOAR, SOAR. That is a system that I created. It took years to create it. And it's this simple. Of course, I had to make it a bird, an acronym.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
Why not?
It's strategy first. Now, I think a lot of marketing teams are doing right things, but they're not getting them in the right order. So they start doing like, oh, we're going to do a podcast. Okay, but what is it going to be about? Now they're into strategy. I'm like, whoa. Why'd you pick podcast? You got to get the strategy done first. You have to have gotten the data to find out that your most ideal client loves podcasts before you pick the channel podcast, right? So S is for strategy. Get your strategy together. O is for organization. And I mean, it is crazy how many times people talk to me about what their system is. And typically it's some kind of a weird Excel file. I'm like, how? I used to do that for $1,000 business, but then people are running multi-million-dollar businesses out of an Excel, checklist or something. I'm like, that is not organization. Organization also means not only we use Trello, and I'm not paid to say that, but we use Trello. It's like we're known for our checklists, having checklists, right? Writing a blog is not one thing. It's about 32 things, right? But those 32 things need to happen every time. You have to start with, what is the persona? What is the part in the buyer's journey you're trying to talk to? What is the pain? What's one of the questions that they're asking? What's the keywords that it goes on and on. So there's a long checklist. But we do it the same time, the same way every time. So don't reinvent the wheel, right? So that's to me organization. And then it bleeds into accountability. But I'm going to kind of come back over to organization here in just one second. But accountability is after we decide the S and the O, then someone goes, I think we should go to this show because so-and-so is going to it. And they're like, oh, okay, we'll go to that show. I'm like, whoa. Was that a part of our strategy? And can we organize it? And that's my next part about organization also then means not just can we organize it? Like, can I think of a checklist? But do we have the bandwidth? And so organizing it needs to be held accountable to the fact that, yes, I can assign it to David all I want, but can David get it done in the time that we need it done? And if he can't, then that needs to be held accountable to the whole system. And the last one is R, which is repeatable. And that's what we were talking about at the beginning, which is nice full circle about entrepreneurs saying, well, we do this. And I remember back when I used to buy a lot of TV. I mean, that was kind of a while back, but we'd have an owner and be like, well, I watch blah, blah, blah. So we'll put the commercials around that. And I'm like, well, but you're not the person I'm trying to reach, so even though you like that show or don't like that show, we're going to buy based on points and grips and the actual audience, right? And so the R is the repeatability, saying, can you set things up in a way where if you did have success, would you know how to do it again? But I have a lot of people, and I'm sure, David, you do too. They come in and they start talking about, well, what we need is we need this goal, we need this number, we need this. I'm like, okay, well, show me what else you've done that's gotten close so we can improve on it. Oh, they don't have that. Well, repeatability gets talked about first, but it can't emerge unless you do the SOA and then you get the R.
The thing that I feel like I am guilty of in my own marketing over and over again, even though I'm aware of it and trying to stop it, is what are simply just random acts of marketing. I know. But here's the thing. I mean, I'm a marketer at heart. I love marketing and I want to execute, right? And and when you shoot from the hip and you're excited about stuff, then you just skip to the fun stuff. And I have found that I skip to the fun part all the time. I'm like, oh, this video, because I can see it in my mind, right? And I'm so excited. This video is going to be incredible. I'm going to get it out there. It's going to be on social media and everyone's going to click it, and nobody does, right? And I think your SOAR process hits, I think, something I've seen with my clients, with my businesses over and over again, right? So yes, strategy before you get super excited about that video, right? Where that comes into, I think is great. Let me ask you a question going back to metrics, right? I have been trying to get marketers, especially that work for me, to think of what they're doing as not that they have to be heroes, right? They don't have to be the mighty Casey who goes up to the plate and hits a home run every time. Instead, the metaphor I try to give them is, I want you to be a scientist. I want you to have a hypothesis, and then I want you to dispassionately test your hypothesis and then report back on the results. And if it didn't work, you're not a failure just because the marketing didn't work, right? We just know that that's one less thing that we have to try in the future, because I don't want to see us fail. So I love what you're doing. And so let me ask you a part about where strategy and where your organization come together. Where in your process do people start to establish the hypothesis and the metrics of, hey, if we do this right, this is what success would look like? Is that an organizational item or is that a strategy item?
Well, yeah, no, I think that's more an organizational, because the strategy would be, is this something that our persona, our buyer would like, right? So that kind of That's the short version of the strategy. And then we start choosing and then if we choose the channel, we're saying, is this where our persona would look? Right. But then the hypothesis and the curiosity, that kind of stuff, it is in the creative kind of starts happening in the organization. We pick that. And so probably the creativity is somewhere in between the S and the O, because we have these crazy ideas, but then we got to go organize them. Right. And I love what you said there about them separating themselves, their own sense of worth from this idea, if it works or not. We talk about this at Little Bird Marketing as what you eye is not what you are. Right. So you as an individual, you're a perfect 10. Like I can't destroy that. You walk in the doors, you leave, even if you're a total role failure, you still are a wonderful person. Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes we fail in our role. So we could leave and roll. And that helps people understand also, let marketing fail. I can fail in my role and the marketing can fail. What we can't forget to do is to learn from it. And so another way that we talk about this, I think is very helpful for teams, is to say over and over to your team and to yourself, put pressure on systems. Don't put pressure on people. Right? People don't need to feel like, oh, this needs to work. We need to say to LinkedIn, well, you better make it work if I'm going to spend just money with you. Right? We've got to put the pressure on the thing that we're doing. And I think that helps them get that, what you talk about, that dispassionate view of things that is a little bit more scientific and it's experimental. And I think that's really lovely. But I want to add one other thing to that. And that is to say that you need to embolden your team to say no to things. And this is one of the things I really love about my strategy role and when I get to do fractional CMO work. And that is to tell people, look, everybody has an idea. There's a million things you can do in marketing. There's everybody will raise their hand and tell you what you should be doing, right? Even your brother-in-law will tell you, right? Even your niece will tell you what it doesn't it's everywhere, right? But if you really follow a framework, you will get the beautiful opportunity to say no to things. And when you start turning down things, it gets really lovely. And I know you're a part of entrepreneurial organization. And, a lot of people who work on traction, on those rules of running your business, saying no to things is very important. And I look at it like this. You can get traction on things or you can be distracted by things. And you have to stop getting distracted in order to get traction, right? Because the opposite of traction is distraction. So I think about that. It's like there's too many things going on in marketing so often. And even with the current client I'm working with right now, I just was like, whoa, no, we're slowing the whole thing down. Stop the train. And that's very odd for me because I'm usually very go. But when the strategy, when it is all not together, you have to learn the power of saying no.
Yeah. Well, when I think about SOAR, what I think is a really helpful piece of that, because I have a hard time saying no, is that final letter, right? That R. Because it seems to me like if it's not repeatable, then what am I doing? So what kind of strategy was that? What kind of operational, things I do? Even if I hold somebody accountable, if it's not repeatable, I'm not there, right? So I like that, and I think that is probably a good way for me to say no, is just having the framework and having that last check at the beginning of how repeatable is this. Yeah. So I love that.
Had this meeting this morning with my two top executives, Corey and Leighton, and we were talking about, I'm like, well, what I think we should do is that there was an idea I had about YouTube. And then we were about 7 minutes into the conversation. I said, and just remember that we can also just say no to this idea and completely put it to bed. And you have to say that out loud often, even though they both, one of them's worked for me for 7 years, the other one for 11, they've heard me say it a bunch, but I'm also saying that to myself and I'm freeing myself from, well, I had this idea, so I'm committed to it. No, I'm not. And we're not. And even if we get middle of the way through this project and we realize this is a bad use of our time and money, we're going to quit it right there. You cannot do that sunk cost fallacy and then just throw the whole company down that hole.
Now, Priscilla, I want to take SOAR on a little test drive, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
All right. And here's what I'm thinking. I'm going to throw a couple thoughts at you, and then you're going to yell at me and tell me I'm wrong. But here's how this works. For people that don't know Black Rifle Coffee, just think of like the hockey stick that goes straight up, only like now multiply it by 5 because it just went even more straight up. And they sold tons of coffee, and how they did it there's so many cool parts of the story that I don't have time to get into. But the one part I do want to talk about is they were one of the early people on Facebook Marketplace. They built a really big community there, and as fast as they could make their coffee, they were shipping their coffee, and they knew their market. They had everything dialed in. They had their strategy. And when I asked him, I said, what was it like in those early days of Facebook, advertising? And he was like, it was like a license to steal, man. It was just incredible how fast it went. And I was like, okay, that's really cool. That's a neat channel. So this got my brain thinking. And the real life conversation I had with our team is, there's a lot of new channels out there right now, right? And TikTok is definitely one that no one is doing anything with when it comes to like enterprise software, like Content Line. And I was like, what I got excited, right? What if we should just get into TikTok, right? And it totally violates the thing that you just mentioned. But my question for you, the reason I want to take SOAR on a little test drive here is that's a new channel that's totally unexplored. How would you approach that from a SOAR perspective to try to figure out if it's even worth doing something totally new that's never been done before? What are your thoughts? How would you get your arms around it?
I love that. I do think it is coming back to S, and I have free resources out on littlebirdmarketing.com/resources. And I would say start with some of the persona template work. There, I have a full guide you can read through, and then there's a workbook you can do. And so this is research you're doing yourself, right? So not paying me, not paying anyone else. Start there. And part of it is like what I said at the beginning is that persona work, really strong persona work, understanding who you sell to, who you are incredibly attractive to, and, who is up at night with a problem that you solve the best. Right. And so understanding that is first and foremost. So you got to start there. And then you might say, okay, well, let's just say David is a perfect, consumer for this enterprise software I have. Okay, great. Well, let's go see what channels is David on. Oh, he's on TikTok. Oh, he's on Facebook. Oh, he's on LinkedIn. Okay, should we go and should we sell him our enterprise software? Sure, we should. What channel should we pick? Well, he's on TikTok. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. What is he doing on TikTok? This is where you get a finer point. And I think years of marketing strategy to understand I might be on Facebook, but when I'm on Facebook, I'm in a mindset where I'm talking to my mom or I'm checking out things that are going on with my neighbors or my kids or whatever it is. I'm not buying $50,000 enterprise software. It's not the mind state that I'm in. So I might flip through something, and the chances of me actually engaging with something that is work related when I'm on Facebook is about zero. That's my time, right? Which this is totally hypothetical because I'm not on Facebook. But anyway, but likewise, this is what you're on TikTok. You're not working then, right? You're playing. Mm-hmm. Now for Black Rifle Coffee, that could be really great because that gives you a lifestyle, right? That's what they sold. A lifestyle logo attached to coffee. That's all that is, right? Break that down. It's like, this is about the way we see ourselves. It's about the truth of our identity. This is why I don't even understand why I have a Apple Watch. Like, I don't even really understand what it does, but Apple has a certain brand and it's good with my identity. Like, I can't. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When it had a better camera, I couldn't do it because my identity as being an Apple and a Mac person. It would cause too much personal consternation over who I am trying to project who I am. Right. So as a human, behavioral science tells us I'm not going to move too far out of that comfort zone. And Google could give me a free freaking phone and I still wouldn't do it. Right. So. Okay. Like you can't overcome these things because they're mental habits, they're heuristics that we're using in order to, make our life a lot easier. So my point is this, okay, if it were this rifle company and you were my buyer and you were out on TikTok, if it were a consumer good, yeah. If it's $20, if it's $30, sure. The moment it's $1,000, no, because you're not in that marketing mind state at that point. Right. And so I think there's some real importance there. It's not just about where they are, your buyer is, it's about where they are when they need you the most. And so for what you do, that channel is going to be LinkedIn. That channel could be YouTube. because YouTube does filter and give you a business experience. If you look at my feed on YouTube, it's all an entrepreneur this, entrepreneur that, so it is going to feed things to me that would make sense. Would I be in the mind state to buy something that's 50 grand when I'm on YouTube? Probably not, but if you referred me to a webinar maybe that was so in alignment with a need I had right now, and I didn't even remember I got it from YouTube, and then I went and watched it and you were able to nurture me into it, yeah, maybe I could. So you have to think about the whole life cycle. And so that's where I think yes, SOAR is a simple framework and it will help you, but you have to kind of go the distance with strategy.
Yep. Okay, great. Well, sounds like you're spoken.
You said I was going to yell at you and I didn't.
Yeah, I was getting ready for see, you just did it. You just went right to the channel, just like I just mentioned about podcasts. Anyway, you could have done that. That would have been fair, but I guess you have better EQ than that. So speaking of which, you've been known to be a fractional CMO, I've heard from time to time.
Yes.
So I want to know, when the new sheriff rides into town, how do you begin to get your arms around a new team, a new situation, so that you can, get the buy-in you're looking for and get, without being a wallflower, and getting everybody kind of aligned with what you were there to do? Walk me through how do you do that?
Well, I do a lot of interviews. I go on a listening tour and I record all of those. And then I filter through AI and I say, AI, what did I miss? I give me the summaries, and then I can query that data. So man, being a fractional CMO now is really different from when I first started it. And I had to listen to all of those interviews and use my own brain only in order to remember all the nuance of wonderful things that people say. People just divulge so much interesting information, especially if they feel like the company's been stuck and they're so excited for you to be there, which is such a great feeling. And you're like, okay. And then I'm like, tell me what you think needs to happen. And sometimes they'll say some things under their breath, like, oh, well, only which drives me crazy when they give that frustration. That is when I'm always listening. Right.
Okay.
And that's even with persona work. I ask people all the time, when you talk to your most ideal client and they say, oh, what's the next thing? What comes out of the mouth? Because if you solve that, you've got them. So take that same work that I know about how humans behave and apply that to being a fractional CMO. Humans are humans. They're going to behave the exact same way. When they say that they're frustrated, that's when I'm listening. And then I can say, I can solve for that. Or a couple times, only a few times in this last round, I had to say, that's actually not in my purview. That's not in my job. Let me see if I can get that to the right person, but I'm not going to be tackling that. And them being honest and them telling me that and me being honest back then earns that trust. And so I can go take it to someone else. But, that way my job description just doesn't become just this crazy blob. I really can get in and say, but for the things that are related to my purview and the marching orders I have, I can get that done. And that gives you a lot of buy-in from the team, right?
Yeah.
And then you just have to tackle things one by one, and you have to tell people we're going to need to be patient and we're not going to be able to get everything done all at once, right?
And so when you come in as a CMO, what do you feel is the 1 to 3 things that are kind of the first thing that you want to get done or make sure is already done? What does your foundation look like?
Well, the listening is number 1. The number 2 is it's really about an asset audit, because I don't want to recreate things that people have. And very often I'm called in to winning teams. They're smart enough to hire me, right? They're probably smart enough to have done a lot of wonderful things. They're not idiots, right? They're in a wonderful place where they need good help. So they've probably done a lot of good things. So it's not all about me. It's about auditing what they have and saying, you may not have even a content problem. You may just have a distribution problem, and so it's really about assessing that. So that's kind of my second thing, is to really asset audit and say, because otherwise people are like, well, what we need to create is we need to do this. And here goes all the budget, new stuff. And about, 8 weeks into it, you're like, oh, we just made that. They're like, oh, it's a lot like the thing we did here. And I'm like, wait, how come no one showed me this? So we want to recreate anything that's wonderful. And then the last thing is, I think it's about really looking at data. It's about asking everybody the hard questions. I do CMO work, but I talk with all the CROs and the salespeople. I am a dyed-in-the-wool salesperson, and I will die on this hill. Marketing is for the purpose of sales. So I'll talk with them and I'll get real with them about, I want everybody to show me their dashboards. What is the data that you are looking at? And for the most part, nobody will show you anything. And that's when you now can have a real conversation with leadership and get everybody to admit that nobody is working based on data. And now we're at a good place to start. So to me, listening to everybody, kind of finding the frustrations and those points, auditing their assets so that we don't recreate anything and we don't miss anything, that's golden, and then the last thing, saying, okay, but we're going to switch things because we're going to start looking at data.
Got it. That data-driven piece is a nice turn. And I think that, that is probably the hardest thing, I think, for anybody to get in the habit of doing. So, the other side of this, and I have struggled with this too, is the data piece. I have gone from, I am going to have the most sophisticated, tricked out top of funnel to bottom of funnel with every metric, every last click. And it's like just a wash, and I have all this stuff and everybody goes blind, right? I've also had guys, we're going to focus on 3 metrics, right? Number of leads, number of converts, number of closes. That's it. Both of those have been somewhat wanting for me. Where do you strike the middle ground?
That's interesting. I think it might be different for what my remit is in that particular situation. But at Little Bird Marketing, for our clients, we are pretty famous for doing another program that we call Revenue Sprint. Mm-hmm. What that is you decide on one thing you need to sell. Come to me and say, look, I got to sell this. It's got to be worth at least $6,000 and up. And some of them that I sell, $250,000, right? And I work with companies, they're selling into Coke. They're selling a enterprise, research solution, right? So it's not $20 lipsticks that we're selling, right? So we get really clear about that one thing. And too often teams let their marketing go, okay, we're going to do this month. And then next month, we're going to do this. And then this month, I'm like, no. For 6 months, we are going to focus and we are going to sprint just on this one thing that we're going to sell. Now, will we sell other things during this time frame? Sure. Someone comes to me and says, I would like to give you money, Priscilla. My answer is always yes.
Yes.
That I'm telling you to turn your sales, channels off. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're all going to get focused up on one, because you're right. You can't look at everything at one time. And so we spend 4 to 6 months trying to sell one particular product. And now with a complicated, I have ones that are hundreds of millions of dollars, and that we're running multiple revenue sprints at the same time, but it's with different groups, different teams, right? Mm-hmm. So one team is running one. And what that involves is find that one thing, get it all connected in alignment with the pain points of your most ideal client buyer, and then come up with that content. But then what you've got to do is it's 3 weeks up of promote. Then the week of whatever it is we're doing, whether it's a webinar or an in-person event or whatever it is. And then it's 3 weeks down. Did we follow up with every single person? Too often, they create this marketing thing, but they haven't even written the emails that we have to do the day after. And I'm like, why are we know that day is coming. Everybody get an agreement with it now, right? And so what we do is we do 3 weeks up the event, 3 weeks down. Pause, everybody. Look at the dashboard. Okay, 3 weeks up. Next one that is similar to it, answering maybe a different pain point, but we're selling the same product. We're all singing that tune. 3 weeks down. Pause. 3 times in a row minimum. And that the revenue growth is so crazy. And if you get a team doing it once, they will get addicted to this because they will see for themselves what happens. And this is an old David Ogilvy statement. He said, you're not, advertising to a standing army. It's a marching parade. And what happens is that, you might be playing that, that tune, and they walk by you and they don't need you, right? So you're saying what you need, your marketing speak, but they don't need you. And then you quit saying it. Well, if you keep doing it for 6 months, they either all of a sudden have that issue and they'll buy from you, or something has changed in their world and they need that now, but you haven't then gone off and started singing a different song and you're right there. And so it's just, I feel that marketers give up too soon. They don't plan campaigns that are long enough to actually make an impact on the human brain, right? And we know that it takes 12 to 15 times to make an impression.
Yeah, that is a really nice part of the repeatability. So when the R in SOAR, is that about this kind of repetition, or if whatever we do works, we can roll it out more, or is it both?
I think it's both, really. Also, for me, more than anything, it tells people, please get the reporting, the R, at the end. Quit trying to tell me what this dashboard is supposed to look like at the very beginning. I'll show you what it looks like at the end. Then we'll evaluate it against the goals. To me, it just seems like it's always the conversation people want to have. Well, Priscilla, we can do this if it's going to do this and this and this. I'm like, well, I don't know if it's going to do this and this and this, because we've got to think about the strategy first. So it's just about me trying to help get it in the right order.
Got it. And so that revenue sprint sounds like it is a pretty time-tested playbook, that you will, of applying SOAR, right? So like you've got the revenues, the playbook, and you just do the sprint, and then you can run that and execute that in parallel for multiple teams, or in a serial for just one team, if that's depending on how the company works. And there you go. And then you've got your dashboards and you're all set up.
It's a framework, and we do every piece of execution. So yeah, we charge quite a bit for it, but you can also look at littlebirdmarketing.com revenue-sprint, and you can see our whole mindset of it. If you think you can run it yourself, great, then go do it. We have deliverables upon deliverables. It's like how all 3 emails, all the email headers, all the social graphics, all that, we have a video we put in there. Like our whole creative team is involved. And, so we execute that for people besides the strategy. But the framework is something that people can take and use and understand. And even if you don't get all of it right, it's probably better than the last time you did it without a plan.
Absolutely. So Priscilla, last topic, and then so sort of a French goodbye before we wrap up. And that is that you do your own content marketing and must have done your own SOAR for your own podcast. So could you talk to me a little bit about your podcast? But I would like, just to help our audience understand SOAR, walk me through your podcast through the lens of SOAR.
That's so interesting. My ideal client, we call her C-Suite Stacy. Now, she'd be in the C-Suite. Maybe she has a VP title or whatever. I mean, I know this stuff. Like I don't even need it sitting on my desk anymore, but I had it on my desk for years. I don't write anything, do anything that isn't of interest to her. She ideal. Right. So wherever she's at in C-Suite or right below it, or the owner, but she has an owner mentality. She cares, and she knows her numbers. She knows revenue. She understands where it comes from. And what is keeping her up at night is that she's not sure that the marketing actions that they're doing is bringing any revenue in. She thinks, maybe, what if I fired the entire marketing team? Would anything happen in the company? That's a little idea that floats through Stacy's head. And that's a pain, right? So I'm looking for those kinds of people. So when I think about my podcast, and I have my podcast, actually, it's called Ponderings from the Perch, from my unique, perspective as the mama bird here at Little Bird Marketing. And I straddle marketing and market research. And so I come out with an episode every Friday, and one is going to be more on marketing. And it might even be just a single episode where I'm just telling people the what about marketing, or a new idea, or don't forget this, or let me give this up in a tidy, like maybe 5-point framework, something that would help you actually do something different today. And then the other week is usually an interview with someone. And I usually pick someone from market research or marketing. I was just talking with a user researcher at Spotify. And I was like, I think it'd be great on this. And people want to know, what are you thinking? How are you improving, what they're looking at on their dashboards. And so I look for people who really can give my audience, my C-Suite Stacy, something she needs that I don't have. So I interview them about what they're doing and what they're thinking. I really try to get directly into the practical elements of it. And I don't spend a lot of time talking about people like, how'd you get to this job? Like, who cares? Like, here's this person. I think they're amazing. And what are they thinking? How are they walking into their office on a Monday morning? And really, like, what can you help my audience with, right? So I look for those kinds of very overtly helpful guests. And, like recently I had somebody on that does conversational surveys, this company, Rival Tech. And they were just on because it's about like, you want to know what your customer's doing. Okay, well, this is a good DIY platform. You can actually create the questions and send it out there. But it's all conversational and it's all through text. And so people are just a little bit more, cash, and they're a little bit more forthcoming about what they think about your product or your idea or whatever. And so I'm always looking for extra things like that where someone who's listening might go, oh, that would be a good, that would be a good use case for me, or that's something I really need. So that's what I'm trying to do with my podcast. And obviously I hope I build rapport, and then I do hope they come and check out what we do, and who I am, and, everything from, all of the services that we do at LinkedIn, at Little Bird Marketing, to a LinkedIn course that I teach about how to become an influencer for a B2B professional. And then I also speak at different conferences, and I have a book out called Collaboration is the New Competition. And so I just want people to kind of get to know who I am and what our company is, and then they'll find their way. They'll find their way to the thing that makes the most amount of sense for them.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like littlebirdmarketing.com. Now, there's no fancy spelling on it, right? It's just Little Bird.
No.
And is it Little Bird Marketing or just Little Bird? It's Little Bird Marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Priscilla, I'm sure that people will definitely check you out there. The name of the podcast, once again, is what?
Ponderings from the Perch.
Now, I got to ask, okay, where's the bird thing coming from? What's the backstory on the birds? Yeah.
So very, very quick story.
All right.
I bought the leasehold improvements to start this company from somebody. It was called Grow Marketing. It wasn't my thing. Then we had an F5 tornado come through Joplin, take out about 20% of our town, or about 30% of our town in 20 minutes. 3 weeks later, my whole creative studio burned to the ground. I had a chance to start over. So I started over and I'm like, that's not the name I want. And what do I want? I want to have a close relationship. I want a boutique agency. I don't want to be big and kind of be just a big head count, right? And so when you have good news, you usually start by saying a little birdie told me. And that's amazing because first of all, it's good news, right? And probably at that time of my life, could have used a lot of good news. But good news comes like that. But it's not just about good news. It also tells you something about the relationships and the quality of your relationships. Because if you're told that, if a little birdie told you that, you're in the in circle. And so I wanted to feel like that with my clients. I wanted them to be like, oh yeah, you would have heard it. Little birdie would have told you. And I wanted them to be people who wanted that kind of feeling with their clients. And so I wanted to attract that kind of client. And so that's why we are Little Bird Marketing.
Beautiful. Love the birds. It's awesome. So, Priscilla, I want to thank you so much for being a guest on Content Kingdom. This has been awesome. I think taking away things around SOAR, taking around some of the hard looks at your dashboard, evaluating your marketing. These are all things that I think that, are really necessary to making content successful. And I think that your discipline and your approach is really what people need so that they just don't haul off and, start making TikTok videos. So thank you.
It's hard. And I call it the stunning discomfort of entrepreneurship. So kudos to you for, doing your own thing and also trying to do this podcast to help others, because I don't think people understand how much work it is to put these podcasts together, and it truly helps your audience. But I think if they could just share it with someone and give Content Lion a little bit of a chance to be heard from someone else, it always comes back to you. So do a good deed today.
Thanks, Priscilla. Your favorite animal that is not a bird?
Oh, an otter for sure. My husband and I are getting matching otter tattoos this summer.
Favorite bird?
Well, the phoenix for sure. It's rising from the flame. I've been through a creative studio fire, and I feel like this is where, where we came from.
Favorite book? Childhood books count too.
Oh, well, childhood books. Le Petit Prince, The Little Prince, my son Antoine Saint-Exupéry for sure. But for my lifetime, in my 20s, that was Telling the Truth by Frederick Buechner. In my 30s, it was Return to Love from Marianne Williamson. In my 40s, it was The Gifts of Imperfection from Brene Brown. And when I hit 50, it was right here, actually, The Obstacle is the Way from Ryan Holiday.
favorite movie?
Probably The Mission. At the very end, Robert De Niro says, actually somebody else says to him, the horrible bishop, he says, well, thus is the world. Like, I mean, what can you do? You know? And he looks at him and he says, no, thus we've created it. And I just like, to me, it's always super important. And I know this might be cheesy to someone else, but kind of marketing sucks. Marketing can be kind of gross sometimes. And so I think about this and I think, well, just don't be gross. Don't not do marketing. And it's like, it's that idea. It's like, well, it's just like that. It's all out there and it's all gross. It's like, well, just don't be gross.
Outstanding. Well, that's an awesome answer. Thank you. That's one of my favorites.